Hello and welcome to another episode of the Tuesday Talk. Hello and welcome to another episode of Tuesday Talk, the only show on a Tuesday morning that we bring you up close and personal with your parliamentarians. I'm Takuzwa Msakasa, and in today's discussion, we'll be talking about how Parliament can support content creators. Today in the studio, we have Honorable Stanley Sakupwanya joining us from he's the chairperson for Manika Land Youth Caucus. Thank you, Honorable, for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Takuzwa.
So, Honorable, you raised an issue in Parliament about content creators being impacted by sanctions, not able to monetize their work. Can you take back to this day in the Parliament? What inspired you to talk about this issue?
Well, firstly, allow me to correct a position. Firstly, I'm the chairperson of the Parliamentary Youth Caucus. The role that came about because now Zimbabwe has an implementation of the youth quota, which is the first time where Parliament has a mandatory member of Parliament who's under 35, and there are 20 such seats in Parliament based on our constitution. So the institution of that led to the establishment of the Youth Caucus, which is non-partisan, non-political. It's about a caucus that advocates for youth policy through and through. It doesn't matter which political party you come from. Now, with that in mind, when I was elected to be the chairperson of the caucus, we have to think bigger than just, party politics. You are now pushing the agenda of youth, and whichever youth it affects across all sectors in Zimbabwe. And one of the areas that is not talked about enough is the aspect of technology. Technology and how our youth are engaging in technology. The world is transcending. As I said in Parliament in my speech, that, we're going, before we used to follow the ZPCs, the CNNs for youth, for news. And now the young people, to be able to understand, to reach out to them. Their news, they get it from social media, your X, your Twitter, your Facebook, your YouTube. And a lot of them are very good content creators. And, it hurts me when I used to see a lot of them complain that, I'm getting so many likes and yet I'm not monetizing from that, Right now, I think the most monetized person is Mr. Beast. He puts out one video and he doesn't do anything that our Zimbabwean youth can't come up with.
Yeah.
But because he has no limitations, just creates his content, he gets paid for it. There's no blockage of where he's able to show his videos, which is something that I feel our intelligent youth are left behind on. And being the chairman of the Youth Caucus, being a youth myself, that message resonates with me. And I felt it is the platform within which I was voted to get into Parliament. It is the platform within which at least a large section of the youth are really concerned about. And that's why I raised it in Parliament.
But my question comes back to the sanction impacting the youth in Zimbabwe. Don't we know why Zimbabwe was slapped by these sanctions? According to research, according to the brief that I was looking into, it was said that Zimbabwe was slapped with sanctions because these sanctions were in a bid to support the struggles that Zimbabweans were having, democratic change, trying to promote economic growth and restore the rule of law. Doesn't the government know what to do in terms of eradicating these sanctions?
Well, when you talk about democracy, the first thing we talk about is democracy by whose definition? Democracy, in a broader sense, from our perspective as Africans, is majority wins, isn't it? You go to an election, majority of people decide, we win. And once that is done, we move with the agenda of the day. And we move as Zimbabweans to say, elections are done, let's not focus on politics anymore. Let's focus on development. Now, if I were to look at sanctions, and the timing when they were instituted, it's a farce to think it's anything other than the fact that we took back our land, which as Zimbabweans we should not be apologetic for. Because truly speaking, the war of liberation, as much as people might sound, it sounds like rhetoric. It sounds like it's being used as an excuse because we've heard it so many times. But how many people are actually listening to how important land was to the African child that was taken from us. There's no question that sanctions were put on us because of land. And the land was not taken from an African like you or I, but was taken from those who had colonial roots, which is a topic for another day, but that is the reality of the matter. So we should not be apologetic about having taken back our land, despite the fact that we were instituted with, and I must say, illegal sanctions. And why I call them illegal, they did not come out of a UN resolution. If something is legal and if the global society agrees to say that, okay, Zimbabwe, what you did was wrong, and then they slap us with sanctions from the UN perspective, then that's a whole different conversation. But here we're having a scenario whereby because the colonialists have friends and those friends decided that, you know, what you did to us, if they were taking advantage of us, they couldn't take advantage of us anymore and they're not happy about that. Should we therefore dance to their tune? Sell our land just because we want trinkets? I don't think that is proper. I do agree with it doesn't take away the fact that the economy is not doing as well as it should. But we have to remember that having been colonized by a British system, when we took over, what land came with was ownership as well. I think you've heard the statistic in South Africa where, as much as they haven't done land reform, the blacks own less than 10% of their economy. Whereas here in Zimbabwe, we've got ownership of our economy. It's not doing the best, yes, because there are people who want to make an example out of us so that other nations can't follow. But it's important for our youth to keep this conversation going on. They need to know the true reality because sanctions don't help you or I. I can be in ZANU-PF, I can be in opposition. Sanctions hit us all the same. You'd find that this same issue of content creators was just a way of also educating our youth to say, you've got nothing to do with politics. But if you go on Twitter today, get your 1 million likes, your bank accounts in Zimbabwe will never get anything directly into it. And that's a direct result of sanctions. So can you say that the sanctions have been put because of economic, when in actual fact they are hampering our economic ability? So, you know, some of these things I think we must not mix topics. I think the reality of the matter is sanctions were hit on us because of sanctions, because of land reform. And it's not to say that we've shut our borders to say we don't want the West. We do. We want to engage with them. We want to tell them that, look, there's no enmity between us and the West. We don't hate you. Our youth actually, a lot of them admire some of the things we take from the West, just as much as they admire some of the things that are taken from the East. So it's a matter of us coming together and realizing that, okay, we agree that sanctions were because of land. We can't reverse that. And the question must be asked of the West if they do agree with us taking back our land. Because if they don't, then I guess that's a whole different conversation again.
Let's talk about you as a parliamentarian. What are you doing as parliamentarian, as an MP, to address this issue of sanctions so that the youth content creators can benefit from their content being monetized in Zimbabwe?
Well, the whole intention of the debate in the House of Parliament was not just so that we understand the effects of sanctions, because I talked about content creators, but I also talked about farmers. There are a lot of young farmers in Chipinge, for example, who do macadamia nuts from these land reform farms, who are unable to sell their macadamia nuts to European markets. It's there, it's happening on the ground right now. You can go to Chipinge, we can show you these farms. And so what would happen is where traditionally a macadamia nut, the price of macadamia nuts is going up globally, here in Zim, they're selling good quality macadamia nuts for 80 cents, which is nothing per kg. So this is the problem, because you have to pretend like your macadamia nuts are coming from Kenya instead of coming from Zimbabwe, because they won't get the same fair value. So the one mantra that we want to follow is the mantra that the president has taken up to say we're a friend to all and an enemy to none. If we want the economy to work, we cannot do it alone. We recognize that, but we cannot sell our souls for that. So what's important for us is engagement. At this point in time, as Parliament, the debate was based on the fact that we want to send a delegation to America, if possible, and engage with them and say to them, look, a lot of the youth are being affected by this. What really are the issues that you're worried about? It's not necessarily because we need them to teach us democracy. Democracy is ours to determine as Zimbabweans, because Zimbabwe is not a colonial state anymore. And it's just a matter of to say, look, business being done from this side will also be good to them because there are products that we can offer that they want. At the same time, they have got things that they want to invest in our country. And we're saying, let's open that channel, but let it be fair. Let it not be big brother, little brother mentality, because Zimbabwe is a sovereign state, just like America is. We don't meddle in their affairs, and we hope to say that they don't meddle in ours as well. So engagement really is the real crux of the matter, because like I said, the UN resolution, it never passed that Zimbabwe should be under sanctions. So we're not dealing with the United Nations. We're dealing solely with America and potentially the EU, but America at large.
To those who just tuned in, my name is Takuzwa Msakasa. We are discussing an issue of how the Parliament can support content creators. And today in the studio, I'm joined by Honorable Stanley Sakupwanya. Back to you, Honorable. You mentioned an issue about there not being like enough knowledge, there not being like enough information. I'm a youth personally, and you raising this issue of youth content creators really stood up to me. You recently talked about they not be having enough information among the youth. Like, what are you doing as a parliamentarian to make sure that the youth have enough and sufficient information about these sanctions? Because if we go into the streets today and ask people what sanctions are, they have their own definition of sanctions, but they don't know what CIDRA is, when it was slapped on Zimbabwe and everything. What are you doing as a parliamentarian to make sure that these youth or these Zimbabweans are having sufficient information about this?
That really is an important question. And I want to take it from the aspect that I want to use the advantage of the Youth Caucus, because the Youth Caucus itself is a combination of not just the ruling party, but opposition party as well. And the executive, literally, the vice chairman of the Youth Caucus is from the opposition party. So we want to try and create programs within which we can do an engagement with the youth of Zimbabwe from both sides, from all political parties and spheres, and even the independent young thinkers, so that we can talk about these matters. Misinformation is really a big problem I've noticed in social media, because at times it raises people's emotions, but doesn't really get us anywhere. But we believe that if we can rally enough youth behind the cause of what affects us all, then I think we can be a step in the right direction. I think recently, just last week, I was in Kenya. There was a political trip that we had been sent on, the ruling party, along with the opposition parties that were there present. And one thing that stood out for me in Kenya, despite their differences and very big differences during election time, the one program they've got this annual program called the Bunge. Now, what happens in the Bunge is they gather based on ratios, of course, in parliament. They call out political parties to bring general youth who are not members of parliament to parliament. And they have a mock parliament for one day in a year where actual young MPs will be present. And then they allow the general youth to debate matters that affect youth. Because at the end of the day, if the price of bread goes up by 50 cents or $1, it doesn't target to say, I use ZANU-PF or CCC. It targets everybody. So the whole idea is they get in there, they debate. And at the end of the session, they come up with a resolution to say, our resolve as youth across the board is that no matter what, this is bad for our country, because this does not target whether you are this or that. It affects us all at once. And it is my hope that maybe we could take a leaf from that and institute something that's similar like that here in Zimbabwe. So it's something we're working on, so that we can engage with the youth across the political divide. Because obviously, when you bring politics in play, we've got our ideology as ZANU-PF. Someone else has their own ideology, which is a different ballgame, a different conversation. That's not what we want to talk about. At times, and I've noticed, even on social media, a lot of our youth want to decongest the political space. Not decongest, but depoliticize every conversation. Not every conversation has to be about which party are you from for me to give you an answer. Some things have to be about how can we get the country forward? Because if it doesn't go forward, all of us are affected. And to be honest, sanctions affect all of us, regardless of where we're from. So it's something whereby hopefully we can create these platforms. Even us reaching out like this is a platform which I appreciate Open Party for, because it gave me the opportunity to be able to talk. Of course, we haven't had an engagement platform with the viewers, but I'm sure we will with time, where we can actually sit and talk about these things. Because if we take away the veil of politics, it's about, at the end of the day, when bread goes up, I'm on my own at home and no one's going to buy it for me, you see. And one of the things that are affecting that to happen is sanctions itself. So we do need to talk about this, and we will encourage more engagement across the political divide.
Okay, you are voice of the people. You represent the people. I'm very happy that you mentioned about content creators. I'm also a content creator, and at times, like what you said, we find it hard to monetize our content, be it on each and every social platforms. But do you think there are laws that the government or the parliament can instate or reinstate to make sure that this issue about us monetizing our content can actually be sorted out? Because like what you said, if bread goes up, me as a content creator, I have to take money from my Twitter account and buy that bread. So yeah, do you think there are policies that parliament or the government can engage in making sure that this issue should be sorted, besides the issue of sending a member to America, a member of parliament to America?
Yeah, as I said before, the global system works in a certain way. We're trying to ensure that our global, because we're only 16 million people in Zimbabwe. And you can imagine that you are competing with, for example, a Chinese. If you create something that ignites the Chinese, he has got 1 billion viewers already. That's a lot of money, regardless, without international interference. But in Zim, 60 million is not a lot, and not a lot of Zimbabweans are on, social media platforms, especially in the rural areas. So I know when a content creator creates his content, he's doing it beyond borders. And he wants a scenario whereby, even if it's for the rest of Africa or if it's the globe to see, he knows a lot of his income will come from him entertaining beyond Zimbabwe. And for us to do that, it means we're tapping into the global financial system. And that, to be honest, is controlled by the West, which is why that emphasis of us engaging with them is so important. We can't run away from that. But at the same time, as it stands, if you've noticed, we have a lot of successful Zimbabweans who are content creators who have done well for themselves in the arts industry, in the creatives industry outside of Zim. Of course, you've got the actors like Nana Kurira and all those. Those are people who have made it out there. And it's a scenario whereby maybe not so much from a policy perspective, but from a reach out perspective, where government, when they come in, we promote to the tourism industry. Have such people, we can engage such people, where we can talk about ways in which we can incentivize our content creators locally. Because, like I said, when you're creating your content, for example, your audience is not as big as in Zimbabwe as it would have been if you're looking at Africa or if you're looking at the world. And this is what happens with content creators, even in South Africa. They don't just look at South Africa because that population is not enough to generate enough funds for them to say, I can survive off this. They're looking at the global context of things. So maybe in terms of policy, it's something we have to look. In fact, policy-wise, we have to look at AI itself, technology itself. In a way, I feel we are lagging behind a bit, and I appreciate, because even the president, when he went to the UAE recently, while he was in the UAE, he saw how tech has affected so many spheres of society, especially policing, which is what he went for. And he actually acknowledged that Zimbabwe were lagging behind, really. And maybe I think the fact of the president realizing that means to say that when we bring the ideas of policies that incentivize our content creators, I believe he'll definitely jump on board supporting anything that is youth related. Because if you are serious enough to institute a youth quota, which is something that I don't think has been done anywhere else in Africa, then I'm pretty sure our president would be supportive of incentivizing the content creators, the people who tell the narratives from a Zimbabwean perspective, who can share our cultures digitally, which is something that, we need to do more of. I think we can definitely push it.
So aside of sanctions and lagging in terms of AI and not getting enough monetary support, what are the challenges do you think content creators in Zimbabwe are facing? And if they can be addressed, what are the ways which ways do you think these challenges can be addressed?
I don't want to speak ahead of the time because, like I said, there's still a lot of engagement that we have to do. As Parliament, we were voted in by various sectors of youth. We have youth in agriculture, youth in tech, we've got youth in industry. And I don't want to jump the gun because obviously I would love to have a sit down with content creators and hear a lot more of their challenges. But we speak from the generality of what we know, that regardless, as we haven't heard as much from them, but we know that this definitely affects them. There are areas of promoting. I know that promoting content is something that we need to try and see how we can promote them. Because a young person, when you get into the industry, it's like in any kind of business. You get even into farming or whatever, you're competing against someone that's already established. So definitely we have to find ways in which we can incentivize and promote them financially even, because I don't think there's been enough financial promotion of content creators. Content creators ties directly with the arts industry. So I do appreciate that the arts industry was given a separate ministry from try advocate so that we step up that in terms of the Ministry of Finance supporting the arts ministry so that we can support by extension our content creators as well.
Unfortunately, we have run out of time. This was a very fruitful and engaging conversation.
Thank you.
In 30 seconds, can you summarize this and tell the content creators, give the content creators hope, give us hope, MP?
Well, firstly, I must say that we appreciate every youth that's doing something for Zimbabwe, whatever space that you're doing. When we talk about GDP in Parliament, it means to say whatever it is that you're doing that's earning you $1, you're doing it not just for yourself, but the nation. So despite the harsh economic situations that we go through, we want to encourage you to keep doing more. As your parliamentarians, will have more platforms within which we can sit and talk and engage. And just remember that Zimbabwe really is our only home. We don't have any other place to go. So let's build together. We're there for you. Thank you.
So from me, Takuzo Msakasa, I'd like to say, keep striving, keep creating content. One day we'll monetize. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Cheers, Takuzo.
Appreciate it.